The special meeting of the Moorestown Township Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is called in conformance with the Open Public Meetings Act with adequate notice provided as follows. Notice filed with the Courier Post on February 16, 2013, and notice filed with the Burlington County Times on February 15, 2013. Mrs. Sugars, will you call the roll, please?
Wake up, Cole. Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Pugh?
Present.
Mrs. Sullivan? Present. Mr. Simeone?
Here.
Mr. Weinstein?
Here.
Mrs. Zajac? Mrs. Goldenberg? Here. Mr. Mishler?
Here. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I suspect that the best time to take public comment will be after we do the hearing. We can't start the hearing. So we'll go through the couple action items that we have, and then we'll start the hearing as soon as it gets to 7:45, which I think is the appointed time. Okay. Okay. I used the word hearing. I should have said public forum. But anyways, because it's not. All right. Well, let's do the action items anyways while we're at it. And yeah, you're ready to do that? Yep, go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this night, a rainy night in New Jersey. Last summer, I started the position here about a month, and I had the pleasure of meeting Debtosh Chakrabarty, who is the Moorestown Education Foundation president. He and I met to talk about what the foundation is about and what the foundation does and what the foundation wants to do. And we soon both realized that we were really on the same wavelength, thinking that the foundation should really help all kids in the Moorestown schools. How do you do that? How do you help the kids that are struggling? How do you help the kids that are high achievers? Well, talking to Debtosh and then foundation members and then administrators and teachers, we put together what we're calling now the Academy of Excellence. The Academy, proudly sponsored by a grant that the board approves tonight by the Moorestown Education Foundation. The grant tonight is a little over $47,000. Now, as Debtosh and I were talking, I said this phrase to him, and I say it a lot to my administrators and teachers, that all means all. And that means all students can learn. Each and every one of them. Doesn't matter race, color, gender, whatever it might be, all means all. And how do we as a public school district, touch on all the kids? It's a challenge. It's a big challenge for public schools, particularly with all the mandates that are being thrown at us from the state and the federal government. It's difficult. It's difficult to fit it into that 7.5 hour day. There is so much going on. So as we talked, we thought, you know what, this would be a great way to expand the school day. Because if we believe all means all, you learn a different way than I do, and you learn a different way that I learn. But we also learn at different rates. It may take me, it'll probably take me longer to learn something than it would someone else. So how do we then address those needs of those kids? They learn differently and different ways and different lengths of time. So we're hoping the Academy will address some of that. We also want to take away the excuses. I can't say after because I have no ride home. Well, the academy addresses that. I can't come in early because there's nobody there to help me. We can take care of that. So we've tried, as you'll see in a second, tried to take away all those excuses, so all means all, and the academy helps us reach that. Now, the mission of the academy is to enhance the educational experience of the township, students of the Moorestown Township Public Schools. We want to celebrate and encourage the joy of learning. That's why we're in this profession. That's why we're in this profession. And when you, as a teacher, see that light bulb go on or that aha moment, it's priceless. That's why we do these things. We want to improve and extend academic skills of students. If they can't make it in that 45-minute period or 90-minute period, well, shame on us for not giving them the opportunity to learn in different lengths of time. So we're looking to extend that. And then we want to also enhance and provide additional learning opportunities for students. That's a big task. It's a huge task. And as we started getting into this, the academy, or the NEF and the committee that formed, we thought, boy, this is a giant undertaking. We need to come in within a budget, and we really want to start out small. We'd love to do it all the first year because we have some great ideas, and I'll get to that at the end. But we said, okay, let's start small. This is a pilot. Let's see how it works here in Moorestown. And it's gone through a number of different transitions over the past number of months, and we're finally happy now that we've gotten to a point where we're ready to present it. Now, the academy is both supplemental and enrichment classes. We're going to focus on math, reading, and writing. Taught by our own teachers, which is incredibly important. Those teachers know our kids. And we have terrific teachers. And we want those teachers working with their students before and after school, which is the next bullet. Before and after school classes. Grades 1 through 6. We're going to operate all 4 elementary schools. And there will be transportation in the afternoon for students that want to stay. And this is what Part 1 looks like. What we decided a couple weeks ago, we thought, if we're going to do this thing and do it right, let's chunk it into 2 parts. The first 5 weeks and the second 5 weeks. So the first 5 weeks, we start with a jump start to learning. That'll happen in all 3 of the elementary schools, the lower grades. It'll happen Wednesday and Friday, and it's in the morning. We serve the kids breakfast, get them ready for school, a jump start. So they get into the classes ready to learn. It's the best time of the day to learn, and the best time to teach. So let's take advantage of that. Jump start to learning 2 days a week. Tiger Writers and Writer's Den, both writing courses at UES. Books and Buddies is basically a homework club. If your child is like my son, it takes him forever to do his homework. When he does his homework. He just had his conference today, and he has a thing about doing homework. He could be going to Books and Buddies. He's the kind of student that we need to organize him. We need to get him ready for the next school day by helping him do his homework, getting his backpack organized, and then sending him home, coming back with the skills the next day to be successful. Cub Writers is a class for 3rd grade students right before NJ Ask. So we'll get them prepped for the NJ Ask assessments in May. Math Monday, Math Counts used to be a very successful, very popular club at UES. We're hoping to bring it back next year. Math Monday and Tiger Math will get students ready for that program if they so desire for next year. So that's part 1. Part 2 will be totally enrichment. And I don't have a listing up there because the teachers are working on those classes now. Once we have those classes finalized, then I'll present at next month's meeting. So the second half, the second 5 weeks are all the enrichment type of activities. This is a combination of enrichment and extra help. Now, why do we need this academy? I explained about extending the school day, about addressing learning in a different way. This falls into the support structures of our district. And we have a lot of those. David Tate and Carol Butler over here with Dr. Susan Toski are working to structure our basic skills program in a better way, to be more effective, to take advantage of the staff that we have and the time that we have. That's a support structure. ESL, English as a Second Language, is a support net or safety net for our students. Special education, 504 plans, are safety nets for kids who learn differently. This falls right in line with that. And I talked a little bit before about the future possibilities. And these are things that we put on the table. We said, you know what, this is just too much the first time out. Let's run this program. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't work. Tweak it, and then move it forward. So we're looking to expand it to WANs and to the high school eventually. We, of course, want to offer additional classes. The teachers are coming up with their own ideas of what these classes should be based on the students that they have. So we're assuming it'll be based on what the kids like. We want to offer more of that. We want to add some additional time, maybe a couple more days a week, or longer periods of time for the kids. And we're talking about partnership with other groups and organizations. A lot of great organizations here in Moorestown that I quickly found out that are willing, that want to help the kids. And I think if we can create this partnership, this network, we can really do a great job in town with everyone moving the school district to newer and higher heights. So that's the academy. Start date is March 25th, pending board approval tonight. And we're ready to go. Transportation in the afternoon, snacks in the afternoon, jumpstart to learning in the morning, and a bunch of great classes in the afternoon. We're very excited, and a great thanks to Lisa and your teachers for helping us put this together. Thanks to the MEF and their leadership. It's been sometimes an arduous process. Mike D'Astenzo is the assistant principal at UES. He is the supervisor of the academy. And if you don't know Mike, get to know Mike, because he's done just an outstanding job in putting this program together. Pending approval tonight, all the information will go out tomorrow. It will go on Facebook, it will go on our website. We have flyers, we have brochures, we have a parent handbook that will go out. So all that will go out tomorrow, again, pending board approval. And again, if there are any questions, you can call Mike, email me, be happy to answer your questions. That's the academy.
Any questions? I want to just add a comment about the Moorestown Education Foundation, but I think we're going to take questions first for the board.
I have a couple. Brian, which teachers have been, tell me who, how were they selected?
The positions were first posted, and the principals are the ones that chose who those teachers should be in those classrooms.
What's the capacity of each of these classes?
They're all different. Roughly between 20 and 25 students. Some of the supplemental classes, those ratios will be smaller because we want to really affect change and work with the students on a 1:5, 1:6 ratio.
So how will we handle over subscription or over capacity?
That's one of our challenges. The supplemental classes will be by invitation. The teachers know their kids, they know the families, they know the kids that need the extra time. So the supplemental classes will be almost a hand-pick of those kids that really need the extra boost. The enrichment piece we're not sure about. We're expecting a number of kids to want to participate. A number of those classes have more than one. Some have 2, some have 4 teachers, so we can expand if those numbers come in. If the numbers come in overwhelmingly for a class, we may look within our budget, can we offer that class twice a week instead of once a week and have 2 groups of students. So we have an idea, we're not going to know until we actually have those numbers come in.
Okay, but if it's not by invitation class, then if there's an oversubscription, or more kids want to come, we have capacity for, how would this work out?
We're going to hopefully offer that class more. Instead of once a week, maybe it'll be twice a week.
And where you respond to that effort? Would we
Yes.
have classes 2, 3, and 4?
When we had a meeting with the teachers probably a month or 2 months ago, we talked to some of the enrichment teachers, and they were open to that idea, that based on their schedule, if they're available, they'll teach those classes.
So has the grant taken that into account, or is there a promise for additional funds if we need to have those classes?
Well, we've really not talked about that with MEF. There is some wiggle room within the budget that we can add additional classes if we need to cut back on supplies, that kind of thing. There's not a lot, but we're hoping to make that happen.
And all the materials have been reviewed by Ms. Butler, the curriculum here. It's consistent with what we're doing in the rest of the district.
It's just an extension of what they're doing already. So you're not going to see a brand new curriculum in the supplemental classes. The enrichment classes are meant to be academically based. For instance, we have the art teacher, I think Roberts or Baker. She's going to do something with art and math. So it's more of an extension of what we're already offering in the classroom.
So we look at that as a district for
You've got that point.
Okay, so we have reviewed materials. And the materials that you mentioned will be going out tomorrow, if this is approved. Those have been reviewed and approved as well.
Yes.
And the first set of 5 classes runs from March 25th to when?
I don't have the dates. It's a 5-week. With spring break in there, it'll probably back to late April.
So the plan would be to run it for 5 weeks and then assess how we've done.
We're going to assess continuously. We should know what's working, what's not working, probably within 2 weeks. Something that I didn't mention as well, in the supplemental classes, we're going to measure student achievement, where they started, where they ended. It's not a lot of time, but we want to see if these programs are going to work, and we're very optimistic that they will.
So for the supplemental by invitation, then, we have some standards for the achievement based on the individual student and measurement by some existing standardized tests, or through some set of testing that we administer in the joint class?
It'll be existing, things that we do already. Dibbles, the map testing, those types of things that are already in place.
And obviously the teachers in the area are on board with this. They've seen all the materials that we talked about and they agree.
Yes.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, sure.
This is maybe for MEF also. It sounds really wonderful. Have there been discussions about sustainability in terms of not just this year, but next year and the year?
Anyone else?
Yeah, in selection, so have all the staff's been selected as to who's going to be providing these additional services already?
Probably 70–75% of the staff has already been identified, knowing that we're waiting for work approval tonight.
And just, I'm struggling a little bit here. You said these things have been approved and you've run through our curriculum already? Carol's already reviewed them, is that correct?
No.
And what board committee is this going to do? I know it's going to be the MEF, but board committees look at this at all as far as its liability, its curricular basis? Is it going to be any board committee at all?
No, they're just accepting the grant.
But I'm hesitant to accept the money if I'm not ready to implement the usage.
But we accept Title I, we accept NCLB with little to no discussion. It's the same type of
I beg to differ, but very different. We're implementing a whole new program with these funds that we have not fully vetted as board. Title I, NCLB are for specific programs and for specific things that we already do and have done for years on end as a district.
That's not necessarily the case, Dave. That things do change through the course of doing those grants.
Brian, I guess the question is, if we don't utilize these funds, what happens to them? Do we have to return them to the MEF?
I would believe they would want their money back, yes.
Okay, because what you're asking for is us to accept it then, but you're not asking us to approve the academy then tonight?
and ask me to accept the grant and then rely on the educators that they put it together a terrific program for our kids.
But Brian, I beg to differ. I think you have to approve it. It's part of the curricular basis of the district. You have to approve it as part of the curriculum for the school.
I will defer to our attorney
The board should approve the academy.
as a program. Okay. We can add it to the end of that.
I'm not adding anything. I don't know any details, not going through any board committee.
I gave you all the details last week.
No, you didn't. What do you want? You report?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't anticipate this happening, but saying if it was approved and put into place, and you don't get the student buy-in and the parent buy-in, saying if you only get half the amount that you anticipate, will you continue to offer them, or will you call off the program?
There is a minimum number of students that will need to be part of the program.
You'll invite a certain number of students, figure out how many accepted. It's like running a wedding list. You'll go to plan B, you'll go to plan C. You walk your way through their achievement factors. There aren't enough to run the enrichment part. That's a different story. I just want to say a couple things about the Moorestown Education Foundation. And I will say we, because I've been part of that for the last few years, have been looking for a project specifically to the enrichment part of this program. I'm sorry, what do you call the other part? The supplemental part of this program. And we've been working, or this idea basically started with the MEF some time ago, and it was presented to the administration when John Bach was their superintendent. So it's been through many iterations to get to the point where it is. To Lee's point, the fixed costs are relatively high, the incremental costs are relatively low if we were to get more participants. We've at least talked about perhaps if the enrichment program side of this grows, that you could charge some nominal fee to help offset some of the costs, but most of the fixed costs are going to be taken care of by the MEF grant. I just want to recognize the people that are on the MEF, that first of all, the people that are the voters, and you'll add to it if I miss somebody, please. Joe Aristone, Georgina Wardzinski, Deb Chakrabarty, Gene Alexandrov, Kathy Goldberg, myself, Mara Jacobs. Is there anybody else that's a voter? I think that's it. And then we have representatives from like Deb Afterholt from the MEA. We have
Christine Kienzel from
Moore Arts. We have Amy Penwell from Public School. Anyone else? I hope I don't miss anybody because they've worked very hard on getting us to this point. I guess that's it. Now, we talked about this ahead of time, and Kathy and I are both going to abstain from the vote. We already voted on the MEF side, and we're part of the unanimous approval to go forward and offer this grant to the schools. So, any additional comments or questions?
That is one last question. So the vote that's on our agenda is for the acceptance of the grant only, is that correct?
Correct.
Well, we either amend this motion, as Art pointed out, to accept, I guess, the concept of the Academy of Excellences presented by Brian this evening, or we need to have two separate votes. I don't believe that it's in the best interest of the school district or the academy, the MEF or the academy to put this off for several more weeks. We've been kind of pushing back the start date of this as we've gotten a number of issues worked out, and it's now sitting right in a period of time where we needed the supplemental work as much as we could get into the program before testing and whatnot begins. So I think what I would like is a motion to amend this, the motion in front of you to include accepting the concept of the Academy of Excellence.
I move to amend it to accept the Academy's Excellence as presented. Yeah, in addition to accepting
The program.
the program.
Right.
So,
Okay. All right, thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion about that particular issue?
I would request that we break them into two separate motions. I'd rather have them separated than as one. I'm still very concerned that this has not been vetted by any board committee. It's not going through the curriculum.
No, I understand.
So I would prefer them to be separated.
There's a motion and a second. We're going to vote on the motion, the amended motion that has been seconded. Are Kathy and I allowed to vote on that, or?
No, you're not.
No,
Okay,
I'm
we're
not
going
going to
to
vote.
abstain. Okay. So I guess the best thing to do would be to call the roll on the amended motion.
Are we voting on the motion itself or on the motion to amend?
Motion to amend.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Pugh?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Simeon?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
No.
Mrs. Goldenberg? Abstain. Mr. Mitchell?
Abstain. Okay. Now, Mr. Lawyer, what do we vote on next? Accepting the grant?
Except yes.
Okay. May I have such a motion? It is a resolution that's requesting approving the acceptance of Moorestown Education Foundation grant in the amount of approximately $47,482 to fund the quote-unquote Academy of Excellence program.
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
Quick question, since it was just amended, are we now accepting both? Yes. Not just the first? We should get first part. So I'll make sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as amended.
That's amended.
Any questions or comments? Lynn, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Pugh?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Simeon?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
No.
Mrs. Goldenberg? Abstain. Mr. Mitchell?
Abstain. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let me just catch my brother. Oh, I'm sorry. We left the most important person off my recollection of who's on the MEF, and that's Joanne D'Angelo, who runs our golf tournament, which raises much of the money that we spent this evening. So, well, yeah, Lynn's our secretary. What are you? Treasurer. Just for your information, besides running the golf tournament and sponsoring other fundraising activities and events like Project Graduation Flow-Throughs, we also hold all the funds for scholarships and other, like a memorial scholarship type thing. Well, we hold the funds and we're involved in the process of distributing those funds as whoever the trustee of the funds is, whatever they decide to do. There's quite a few of those actually. So let's move to.
I can make one final point on that vote. I strongly recommend the administration have the curriculum examined prior to implementing the academy. Make sure it's consistent with the way that we want to see it as a school district.
We have a Moorestown Education Foundation meeting in the morning, and I'm very happy to bring that request to the MEF board in the morning. Go ahead, Dave.
But the MEF isn't running this, we are. Right? I mean, the MEF just gives us.
Right, but the MEF has the oversight at this point, doesn't it?
No, we didn't.
The MEF has given you a grant with certain restrictions in that
They're going to
grant.
be,
And so if we accept the grant, then we've got to comply with those
So
restrictions.
we just accepted a grant with conditions that we don't know what they are. I'm done. I'm asking a question. I mean,
But conditions follow the curriculum that's presented tonight.
In any case, I think Mr. Powell has an excellent idea, and we'll take care of that as ASAP. This program is set to start in 2 weeks, and
Yeah, we will absolutely do that. Thank you.
I'll also add that one of our administrators is the supervisor of the Academy of Excellence, and someone who's very familiar with our curriculum.
Can I call point of order? I'm just curious, how can we accept something with terms and conditions that we don't have in front of us? Just asking the question.
I have to agree with Mr. Weinstein on the point. There are conditions which I didn't hear anything about that are substantive that we should hear. I didn't hear anything in the presentation that indicated that there were restrictions on how the program was run or conditions that would be applied to us that we don't understand. Well, there are.
Mr. Powell, the restrictions are as set forth in Mr. Benson's presentation tonight. Basically, they gave the grant, they gave the money to the district, and in that grant, it called for the implementation, establishment of information of the Academy of Excellence, in accordance with Mr. Benson's presentation.
So outside of the presentation results, there are no other conditions that we're unaware of.
Not that I'm aware of.
Or mine.
I mean, you've given the budget and an outline of the classes, of what the purpose of those classes are. Other than that, I'm not sure what else. Mr. Weinstein.
Well, other than that, Mr. Risen had indicated there were conditions, and I was making sure I understood where anything we were aware of.
And there's no conditions on what the second part that's going to be determined or what we're going to do with the upper grade levels. There's no conditions at all coming from the MDF on that. I mean, that's what I'm asking. There's a lot of open-ended points within that presentation that I would say, if the MDF is having input on it, I'd like to know what it is. If they're not, we're just letting us run the program. That's fine. But there are a lot of open items that were in the presentation itself.
The NEF has been terrific in giving us all the latitude that we need in developing these classes, and we wanted them to be creative yet academically based on what we do here in school to support that. Once we get those classes, what they are, I'll make sure the board gets them.
I know I'm in trouble if I mention this is a term or condition, but I think there's an expectation on the part of the MEF that when the enrichment part of this is filled out, we know what the programs are, that it'll come back to us and we'll be able to say, yes, that's the kind of enrichment we were looking for. It's not, I don't know, pottery, we were looking for robotics. That's the only.
And I'm thankful for what the MEF is going to do for us. I'm just concerned that there are a lot of other things that I read things about benchmarking, determination as to where the students are going to be headed and making sure that they can improve. Just those things I want to make sure they're not conditions, and that they're things within our control and not conditions in the compliance. If they are, I want to
Yeah, nothing like that. Conditions were, as I said, academically based, creative classes, but nothing mandated. You have to do oceanography. You have to do nothing along those lines. Like I said, MEF has been terrific about giving us the latitude that educators need to create a great program. And I have faith in Mike and our teachers to do just that.
MEF has a lot of support for what might happen, but expectations or benchmarks is. And it's a one-year funding. This doesn't fund this program next year. So there may be more terms and conditions to follow.
Thank you for answering my question.
So as a point of clarification, though, kind of what started this, going back to Mr. Powell's comment, it would be our purview now to run it through our, the review it on our end, rather than going back to the NEF first, to have the review and see if it's consistent with our curriculum needs.
Well, that's what we said we would do.
Okay.
Thank you. On this particular issue, I'd like to take any public comment. If there is any, then we'll move on to the budget. We'll just split it up that way. No sense waiting for another 15 or 20 minutes or half hour to talk about this subject. Now would be a good time if you have some questions. Okay, then I'll turn it over to Mr. Sugars for the 2013-14 budget. While she's getting set up, over the past 3 or 4 years, we we have, or perhaps even longer, we have traditionally done public forums on our budget between the time of the preliminary approval and the final approval, and much of that was aimed at the fact that following our approval of the budget, there would be a vote for the budget. Well, that all changed last year, and but yet we think this is a tradition that we'd like to continue. And so, Mrs. Sugars, please, thank you.
Yeah, as Don said, we will have our official public hearing on March 27th. That will be the date that the board will approve the final budget. That gets submitted to the county office. And then, because there is no longer an election process, that is our final budget. So the board feels it's important to have a forum like this to take community input in the event that they would want to make changes to the budget in that time frame. So let's talk about next year's budget. Oops. So let's start with our process. So the board started the budget process a little bit earlier this year. We actually started working on things like salaries and benefits as early as September of this year. So by December, we had a pretty good idea of where we were headed. Our early predictions were that we were going to get the same level of state aid next year as we received this year. And our early predictions that we were going to be $2.2 million more in expenditures than revenues with a 2% tax levy increase, or $3.2 million in expenditures over revenues with no tax levy increase. A big part of that was because of the 16% increase in the state health benefits program. We were looking at $1.3 million just in benefits alone. So what did we do? We solicited some proposals through our broker of record to take a look at health benefit programs outside of the school health benefits program. We found a program that offered some significant savings for us, and we switched to a plan through Aetna that will be effective April 1st. We also looked at a kindergarten pilot program. It's an extended day pilot program. We don't generally include revenues from pilot programs in our budget, but we feel pretty confident that this is going to be a successful program. So we included some of those revenues in our budget. We maximized our fund balance usage beyond our excess surplus. Excess surplus is the amount we have to budget. We're actually going to budget more than that into our budget. And we did receive slightly more state aid than last year. Not much, but slightly. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So what does this budget include? There's no capital investment in this budget. There is some tech infrastructure investment through lease purchase funding. There are 4 staffing cuts, teaching staffing cuts based on demographics as we see our enrollment continue to decline, and 3 support staff cuts. So 4 FTEs from the teaching staff and 3 FTEs from the support staff. We will keep our transportation at the 50-50 outsourcing level. We're about 50-50 right now, 50% in-house, 50% outsourced. And through lease purchase funding, we will replace 2 of our buses. On the revenue side, miscellaneous revenues that we're including that were not part of last year, we established a shared services arrangement with the Zelenko School District this year. We're providing business administrator services for them. So we will include those revenues. Again, as I mentioned, the extended day kindergarten pilot. Maximize the use of fund balance. We did not include extraordinary aid. Extraordinary aid is a type of aid that we receive from the state every year that we make application for. For instance, for the 2012-13 school year, we just completed that application. We won't know until May if we're going to receive those funds or not, and those funds are distributed on a prorated basis based on the number of applications the state gets statewide. So we never know what we're going to get. Our application came in at about $900,000. We don't know if we will receive any of that, some of that. Part of the problem part of the state's next year's budget, so we don't like to count on that aid during our budgeting process if we don't have to. Tax levy increased 2% in the general fund, a 1.61% increase overall, because debt service also factors into the overall tax levy. And our state aid came in at just over $3 million for next year. So when we look at our budget expenditures in very broad categories, the state breaks our budget down essentially into 3 large categories, one being the general fund. The general fund is for our day-to-day operations, salaries, textbooks, transportation, utilities, all those kinds of things. The special revenue fund is where we account for all of our grants. And the debt service fund is where we pay for our debt, our bond, principal and interest payments that were already previously approved in bond referendums. So within the general fund, we break our budget down into a couple different categories. The first category being instruction. And in this category, we have general education, special education, basic skills, bilingual, and extracurricular and athletics. And that makes up what the state calls our instruction portion of our general fund budget. And as you can see, we have an increase there of $916,780 or 3.36%. And what kinds of things do we pay out of those categories? We pay salaries out of those categories, we pay for books, we pay for anything that would be related to a classroom, essentially, or an extracurricular activity that comes out of this portion of the budget. The second category in the general fund budget is support services. So these are things that support the process but aren't necessarily in the classroom. So what kinds of things come out of this portion of our budget? Tuition. We pay tuition to other school districts, other private schools for the disabled. We have an increase in that category this year. Student services includes anything that has to do with the guidance office, the child study team, the nurse's office, the attendance office, all kinds of things that help support the educational process. Improvement of instruction and professional development is, classes that our teachers may take, curriculum writing, supervisor salaries. Administrative, there are very specific areas in the budget that the state calls administrative, that being the principal's offices, the superintendent's office, the business and personnel office, and the tech support office. So there are 4 categories that make up the administrative cost line. Operations and maintenance, that's everything from cleaning the floors to heating the building to all different kinds of things, cutting the grass, all those kinds of things. Transportation is our transportation, be that our own staff providing it or contracted service providing it. And employee benefits is medical benefits, workers' comp, pension, tuition reimbursements, all those kinds of things fall into the employee benefits category. So in this particular category, we've seen an increase of $1,280,000 or 4.01.
Another quick question.
Yes.
Is the percentage in the fourth row correct? That would be minus 4.75%.
That should be minus, I'm sorry, you're right.
So that's actually a reduction.
It is a reduction.
So the total administrative costs have gone down year over year?
Yes.
And Mr. for tuition, is that a combination of increase in more people having tuition, or is this generally just the tuition?
It's both. There's a process each year. Private schools for the disabled have to have their tuition rates approved by the state. So they do have to go through a process each year, but that is a combination of additional students being sent out of district and an increase in our already existing tuition costs.
And the ballpark, just, what do you think the tuition increase we're seeing? I assume we have a 2% cap. Are they allowed to go above that 2% cap for tuition?
They're limited like we are. If they have some sort of extenuating circumstance, they can make an appeal to the state to adjust their tuition rates. But they do have to go through, I don't know exactly what their parameters are, but they do have to go through an approval process with the state to get those rates approved.
But the tuition they sent on us could be more than 2%.
Could be. Could be.
Another question, Lynn, if I could.
Sure.
We hadn't switched to the ETHA plan. What's your best guess on what the percentage increase would be for employee benefits this year?
We were looking at $1.2 million just in the health benefits line alone. So this includes a couple other various categories in it. So we were looking at overall just in health benefits, a 15% increase.
Another question under transportation. We're at the 50-50 as far as outsourced right now. If you saw us go more in one direction, how do you think that would be impacted? So for instance, if we outsource more, would you see more savings proportion?
We could, we did in the past couple of years since we've had retirements, we have replaced those with contracted services. We tend to tend to get some complaints about contracted services occasionally. People do prefer to have our own bus drivers driving our own buses. But obviously, as a cost savings measure, we look at that every year. We've had, like in the past few years, quite a few retirements, and so that was a very easy transition. We also needed to replace the buses, so we didn't replace the buses and we didn't fill those goals. So we've been doing it in that method. I think this is a good mix. It still gives us some control, still allows us to maintain our own fleet and do our own things when we need to, but yet still have some cost savings.
We've looked at this so many times over the years. It's a great strategy if you have a one-year problem and you don't have a cap, because the bus companies aren't going to be held to the 2% cap. And in the first year, you can sell your buses and you get big cost savings. But we've always put a pretty heavy premium on control of the system. And at one time, we were 100% our own buses. And so we try to strike a balance there. And this balance seems to work for us. And I'm hoping that we can maintain it at that level. But each year it gets harder and harder.
Do we get any funding from the state or from federal for transportation costs?
We don't get any federal funding. We do have an 8 category called transportation, but it's a general fund aid, so you don't have to specifically use it towards transportation, but it's nowhere near what our costs are. Two other categories that make up the general fund budget: capital outlay. Again, I said there's no capital expenditures in this budget, and I'll explain that $122,000 in a minute. Special schools is our enrichment program, and we account for that in a separate line item. That is our summer enrichment program that runs every year. So overall, we're looking at $2.1 million increase this year to last year, and 3.59%. One of the things that we always like to look at are salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits are 80% of our budget. Salaries is about 63% of our total budget, and benefits is about the remaining 17% of our budget. So if we look at this, we can see that 71% of our budget is certified staff, 1.6% of it is substitute staff, support staff just about 17%, administrative staff just under 8%, and co-curricular and athletics and stipends and things of that nature, 2.3%. So in this budget, the total amount spent on salaries is just about $39 million. In terms of medical benefits, we have medical benefits, Social Security, pension costs, and we have other costs such as workers' comp, tuition reimbursements, things of that nature. Total employee benefits, $10,831,000. Premiums for the medical program, which includes medical benefits, dental benefits, and vision benefits, are $9,866,000. The employee contribution, because of Chapter 78, which is the state law that requires employee contributions towards the cost of health benefits, will be just over $1 million next year. That's up $410,000 from last year. It's a phase-in process, so it's based on both the employee's salary and their level of health benefits. And so as we phase in into the 3rd year of Chapter 78, employees will be contributing 75% of their contribution. By the last year of Chapter 78, which will be the 4th year, they'll be contributing 100% of their contribution. So we will see that number increase each year. Let's look at the revenue side. Fund balance, again, we're using quite a bit of fund balance in this budget, $2.5 million. Our excess surplus is $1.6 million, so we're using more than our excess surplus amount. Our general fund tax levy increasing just over $1 million, $1,073,000, 2% increase. Tuition, we will see an increase in that area. We've had quite a few out-of-district children come to our district this year, and so we feel that we can Miscellaneous revenues, again, we have the extended day program in there and the Delanco arrangement in there, so those numbers are going up for next year. State aid, up about 46,000 from the previous year. Medicaid is a federal aid that we receive, and that number is very much year over year. So reserve for encumbrances in the 12-13 year is a balancing number. Those are purchase orders that we took over from the 10-11, or I'm sorry, the 11-12 school year into the 12-13 budget. And there you can see total again, 3.59% increase.
Then for the fund balance that we're using 2013-2014, what's the likelihood that we'll have a similar number available and still maintain a 2% balance to carry forward in the 2014-2015 school year?
It's going to be very difficult to do that in the following year. We took a look at that the other day, and the ability to contribute to keep using that much of surplus in our budget will definitely hinder our ability to use it in the future. Another reason why we don't always appropriate extraordinary aid is it helps with that number. But if we take a look at it and we budget that much this year, it will potentially have an impact on what we have available for the 14-15.
So the potentiality, the end result is that we would potentially have to find a different revenue source to make up for what we wouldn't potentially have in fund balance next year.
Correct.
And the use of the fund balance to that number, is that your original thought, or is this something that the state said?
Something the state said we had to do. I'm, to be honest, slightly uncomfortable with it. But, you know, we are held to a standard of 2% of the prior year expenditures. And so, whereas before we could adjust that through various means, we don't have as many options available to us to make that adjustment. And so we will be budgeting a little bit more balance.
So if we just roll this forward 1 year to 2015, 14, 15, any idea just what our fund balance would look like? Would it be 1.2 million, you think, in 2014? Because that's 2% that we can use, or do you think?
No, it really depends. The wild card in determining that number is this budget year, how we end this budget year. Did we have deficits in revenues? Did we have overages in revenues? Did we spend all of our budget? We don't typically spend all of our budget. There's usually something left. We did shut the budget down a little bit early this year, just in anticipation of, number one, the increase in health benefits that we didn't anticipate, and number two, going into a difficult budget year, we did shut it down early this year. But, you know, we did some early predictions. I see at least a reduction of $500,000 in our total fund balance next year, and that will obviously affect how much we'll be able to use in the following school year.
I guess my point is if you look at, if you roll it forward, usually our fund balance is not the same every year, so there wouldn't be any difference. So I would hate for it to, let's say it dropped down to 1.2 million, it would be 1.3 million in the hole for next year before we even start.
Before we even start.
I'm just cognizant of doing that, make sure, although you're saying the state says we have to use the fund balance.
Right.
We have to use everything except for 2%.
Right.
Okay, that if we have to, spend less than the end of the year, when we get more extraordinary aid, that'll fill in the gap.
Yes.
So let's say we got extraordinary aid that was same as this year, what was it, some 800 grand or something like that?
We got, last year we got a little over 800,000. Our application is lower this year than it was last year. So we don't know what we'll get. We're using a number of 675 right now, just in case. If we get that, if we close out the rest of this school year, in a decent shape, that will help. But that's sort of how we end every school year.
Right.
So by the fact that we're using more than usual, it will definitely have an effect on the following.
All right, so I'm just trying to kind of put a concept here. So say we ended up with, the 2%, right? We had 2% fund balance, we were able, we have to
Right.
the state. And then we got 675, that would be, so we'd be up to like 1.9 million, right, with fund balance.
Right.
And then we'd still have 600 grand hole just going into next year, right?
Easily.
Okay, plus the 100 grand more debt service
Right.
that we lose because debt service goes up next year. So
Right.
it's 700 grand possibly next year beginning.
Right.
Okay, that's right.
Will we be starting 14, 15 behind the 8 ball? Yes, we will. In terms of what's available in fund balance, yes, absolutely.
Okay, but pretty much we have to, so the state's saying we have to use this fund balance right now. And I'm just wondering what, I want to make sure that we're cognizant of going into next year, that we're going to have a tougher year next year.
Yes.
Because of the goal right now.
Yes.
Then is there any latitude by the state to get a waiver? Or is it-
What we talking about, some security issues and some capital issues, it could be, what we could do is we could put some of that money into a capital reserve. Wouldn't be available for the budget, but it still would be part of our fund.
Put in or other expenditures.
To cut, we would. So let's look at our state aid. I mentioned that we got a little bit more this year than we did last year, so let's break it down. Last year, state aid, $2,989,000 in state aid, just under $3 million. We had 3 different categories of aid that we received: special education aid, security aid, and transportation aid. These are general fund categories of aids. They can just go into the general fund. They don't have to be used for a specific purpose. This year, we received a little bit more, $46,000 more, just over $3 million in state aid. We received a little bit more in our debt service category. So overall, we did receive more in state aid. However, there's also this SDA assessment that the state takes from us each year. When the state gives us our state aid, they give us our state aid, and then they give us this assessment as well. The SDA assessment is for principal and interest on bonds that the state went out for to provide us capital funding. So a couple years ago, we did a couple of projects. We did some lighting projects. We did some fire alarm projects, things like that. We applied to the state for RODS grant funds to do that. The state went out, issued bonds to cover those applications. Now we have to pay an assessment on the principal and interest on those bonds. So while we did get more state aid, we also got a higher SDA assessment. And so the net amount in 2013-14 over 2012-13 is $3,000. Better than less.
How much economic benefit did we get from, we paid $122 grand, we get $5 million, we get $1 million, where do we get all?
I don't know that number off the top of my head because a lot of the projects were done before I got here, but we certainly haven't received anything recently. I don't think there was any huge projects that we did. It was a series of small projects that we did, so maybe a couple million.
And did we know about this before we, or they just kind of
Yeah,
assessed it?
this is new.
It's a brand
This
new
started,
tax.
I want to say this started either last year or the year before.
That's a fair statement. It's a new tax on the grant. They say it's free.
Right.
It's really a new tax on our money.
That's correct.
Right.
You might as well borrow on that.
All right, so let's talk about debt service. Debt service, our budget's going down slightly as we pay off some of our debt. Principal goes up, interest goes down. The overall effect of that is $133,000 less this year than required last year. See, $45 more in state aid in that category, but we need less tax levy to fund that payment, so we do have a slight decrease in this area of the budget. So let's look at tax levy. Tax levy since 2010-11 through 2012-13 was pretty steady. The reason we were able to do that was because, again, as our debt service is dropping off, we were able to lower the tax levy we needed for the debt service and have some slight increases in the general fund. And so we were able to, for the past couple of years, keep the tax levy steady. Unfortunately, this year with some of the increases we were looking at, we weren't able to do that. And so the increase right now is net increase when you combine the general fund and the debt service is $939,000. It's 1.61%. And the impact on the average assessed home is just about $108. Again, enrollments, as we look at our enrollments, that is having a factor in our budget as well when we make some cuts in terms of teaching staff. We compare our 2012 actual numbers of 4,081. We had a demographic study done. We had the first demographic study done in May of 2011, and we just have recently had it updated. You can see that as we went back and looked at some of those numbers, we do anticipate a continual slow decline in our enrollment over the next few years.
Just out of curiosity, I know when Dr. Ray did this for us, we didn't anticipate this to be a kindergarten program.
We did not.
So my
that
question is that, is there any thought that might actually bump our kindergarten enrollment numbers up?
It certainly could. It certainly could, because, some people, if you have working parents or what have you, are looking for a full-day program, they send their kids elsewhere in first grade, and that certainly could have an effect on our numbers. Are there any questions?
I believe, Mrs. Butler, you had a statistic that you mentioned today of 30-something children that entered first grade. Is that
36
36?
36.
students started Moorestown in first grade.
And they were residents when they were kindergarten age? Or they just happened to move in, or
No.
both?
They could be possibly both. We just know that 36 started first grade when that started kindergarten.
Just out of curiosity, have you seen any increase in enrollment since we announced the extended day, or is it just been about the same?
An increase in registration.
Registration, yeah, for the program or for the, that is in general, in registration, I don't know if it's been about the same since it's always been, it's only been a few weeks, I wasn't sure.
Well, this is kindergarten registration.
Right, so it's been a, based on the year over year, I don't know how people are.
Right.
Coming early, because they know they have to be in to be into the program. How are you seeing this?
It's too early for kindergarten. Registration for the other elementaries for the current program, the morning afternoon program, is running about the same as it has in the past years. And we will have a final count, like I said, by April 12th for the program. We have not seen an increase. Some people are still weighing the options for that piece.
If you put up,
Can you go back to the slide at the very beginning that has the bullet points of, it said how many FTEs we're going to cut? Okay, yeah, just leave that up. Any more questions for Mr. Shivers? Public comment on the budget? You'd like? Sure. You want to come to the microphone or get closer to us or something? Name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Scattereggia. I live at 610 Bowling Green in Moorestown. First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Education for your hard work, your dedicated effort, a thankless job. And to some extent, I apologize for the members of our community. There's more of you here than there are of us, so we're outnumbered. And for a budget of $60 million, I would just think that more people would be interested. So I come not as an opponent, not as a proponent, but as one who wants to ask some questions. You know more about this than I do. I'd like to go back for a moment to the Vision 2015. Is that still a workable document? Is that something that I can refer to? Or is that something that's been filed away and where I'm referring?
I believe it's fair to say that there are parts of that document that live on and parts that don't. We obviously had a change of administration, and we've been talking about Vision 2017, so
okay.
Yeah, it's version 2 or something.
That's fair enough. I'd like to just take one note out of it, because as was stated, our salaries and budget account for about 80% of the total expenditure. And part of the Vision 2015 stated, reduce staff to reflect the budgetary realities which we are likely to be in place in 2015. We began this painful process last year. We anticipate that further reductions will be necessary in each of the foreseeable years leading to 2015. I know there have been some staff reductions as indicated, but how close are we to whatever the goal was for 2015? And has that goal changed given the economic conditions? Or do we still look for cuts as we move forward? So
You want me to respond to that?
if you care to.
It
Sure.
sounded like a question, so I thought, yeah. If you go back over the history from, I don't know, 2008, 2009, and you look at the employee cuts across the board, administration, teaching staff, support staff, et cetera, I think you get a much better picture of how the district has changed than if you just look at what's going on this year, which are, I believe, almost all enrollment-driven cuts, meaning we have fewer kids in a class, we don't need a third grade teacher or fifth grade, whatever it happens to be. So we aren't such good prognosticators as to have had a goal of, we wanted to reduce staff by this, but it was clear that our staffing levels had to track down because we knew there was budget constraints. And in the middle of this process, the tax cap went from 4% to 2%, which made it even more dramatic. So I think if you looked at the summation of what we've done, you would have a better picture of than just this year. And I guess, you know, we're on plan, but we're still reducing. So we are on plan.
And if I can just add to that, when the Vision 2015 began, it was, I believe, when Mr. Bach was in his first or second year. So during that time frame, when we lost $3.5 million of state aid about 3 years ago, at that particular time, we reduced our full-time employees by 83 people. So that was quite a huge decrease in our employee base at that point. So I think, I mean, you shouldn't just look at these numbers and think that that's all there is, because we have that huge paring down by necessity as well as by innovation, how to deliver 21st century learning to our student population.
Okay. But is the bottom line, do you still see some more attrition? Do you see additional attrition, either from staff leaving and not being replaced, or are the reductions based primarily on demographics?
Well, I believe it'll be based primarily on demographics. Retirements are a good thing because the pay scale goes from one end to the other. Although we lose, you know, very well qualified, excellent teachers, you know, but that's part of life, I guess. But mostly it would be driven by demographics unless we were to change something very significant like our class size policy. And I mean, we haven't taken a vote, we don't take a vote every, well, I guess we do take a vote every year to support our policies, which include that. We haven't had any discussion about that, and I doubt that that's something we're going to want to change very easily. It would be a pretty dramatic change. And we don't have the lowest class sizes around either, so that's, you know, I mean, there's only, once you get out of the demographic part of it, there's only so, you cut programs, that doesn't really help because the kids still have to go somewhere in the building to do something, and they need to have a teacher, and or you change class sizes.
Right. We talked about the state mandates. I mentioned that before. There's a new teacher evaluation and principal evaluation piece coming in to mandate from the state, requiring more and more evaluations to be done. And to do that, you need capacity to do those things. So it's as Mrs. Goldberg said, it's frustrating when you want to do more and you keep getting more and more mandates put on you that you need more people to do those things. So it's a challenge, and it's difficult to make those things happen. But as you see, it's a productive type of process as you go through the budget. You talk about class size and things like that to get to those FTEs. But as you're cutting back, you're always adding more. And like I said, it's a challenge.
Okay. Now there was some earlier talk about outsourcing. Are there any plans, any additional plans for outsourcing? And looking backward, what has been our experience with outsourcing, if we've had outsourcing, and have those programs met our expectations?
Well, I would say it's been fairly good. We have our issues. We have turnover, and we're talking, in our case, we're talking, the bus thing isn't really outsourcing, you know, but you're talking, we have janitors that work after school hours that are provided by an outside private party, and we have a contract for all our grounds and maintenance with a private party. I think those are the two most significant areas. And yes, we have our issues and we have our successes, and that's the same, perhaps the same, at the same rate or same level as you have with your own employees, but there's no statistic that I can point to, but it's been okay. However, I'll just add that, again, like we were talking about the 50-50 in bus transportation, we think striking a balance is a very sound idea. And the balance that we have now is pretty sound. We can work with it. It works for us. There is no bullet point up there that says outsourcing, you know, X or this type of employee, this class of employee, or whatever. So that's what. Well, I don't know what the next question is.
Well, if you had to make that decision today, that decision today based on the experience, would you continue to advocate outsourcing? Or does it depend on the type of job or position that's being outsourced?
Well, clearly, as you make that decision, it will depend on the various classes of employees you're talking about. It would be unfair for me to say much about what the board's discussed on this issue because the board hasn't had very much discussion on this issue. We've had a number of people come to board meetings and talk about the issue, and so there's been some dialogue, but that was primarily based on rumors, I guess, and the fact that every stone was turned over in preparing this budget. And if outsourcing was one of those stones, then we turned it over. But that's as far as it's going at this point.
And Tom, what outsourcing really does is allow, you know, depending on what the service is, it really allows the board to find out the true cost or true market value of the service. Depending on what it is, and if it's an employee-based, you know, service, obviously that we're outsourcing. In the public sector, the overhead rate is a lot higher than it is in the private sector. So that trade-off in that is something the board needs to take a look at too. There could be other trade-offs that we look at, like such as comfort and making sure it's critical to the organization, where it stands in the organization, make sure it's to the core what we want to do. Maybe we don't want to outsource that from a service standpoint. So it really depends. We are looking at, you know, obviously that's what we look at when we trade-off of the city and discussion.
And Tom, as we move forward with that, there's a bill from the legislature that would prohibit boards from privatizing. So as we're trying to do things in a more efficient way, sometimes politicians handcuff them and don't allow us to do certain things.
You certainly have some challenges, or we have some challenges. Previous budgets, or in previous sessions, there had been discussion or talks and maybe even a proposal concerning paying for activities, parents paying for student activities. As that percentage, as that number looks like it's growing in terms of cost per student, when I look at the cost per student from, what was the base year you gave? 2011, I think, until this year, or the projected 14, that percentage continues to rise. Is there any consideration being given to revisiting that cost for that payment for student activities?
It was considered. It would be if those bullet points kept going. You know, if you drew a line and said, okay, this is what we decided to do, what's the next thing we talked about, that would be right on that list. And I think it's likely be something that will come, because as we just talked about, we need more from the revenue side, but it's not in the budget this year.
Okay. In terms of the revenue, there's significant revenue from the kindergarten program, pre-kindergarten program, from shared services. How is that revenue applied to the budget? Where is that revenue applied to the budget?
There are certain expenditures that are associated with those types of things. Obviously, to provide an extended day kindergarten program, we need to hire more teachers to do that. There was some salary adjustments that were made to provide the business administrator services to another school district. The revenue itself is a miscellaneous revenue. It's an unrestricted revenue. It goes into the general fund. It's not applied to a particular source. But there is, on the other side, the expenditure portion of it that offsets some of that revenue. So, for instance, with the Delanco shared services arrangement, Delanco pays us $75,000 a year. We net out of that about a $35,000 profit. So the revenues are here, the expenditures are here, and the net is what the district benefits from in terms of this.
So that is applied to the budget, then it's a revenue source.
It is.
Great, great. You had a significant decrease, as I looked at as you showed in the expenses, like 4.75% decrease in the administrative expenses, whereas the expenses in all of the other departments, organizational units, increased. Is it possible that you can apply to the other organizations what you apply to the administrative department to achieve some significant changes like you've done in administrative?
Well, some of that's legislative. Our superintendent's salaries capped, as are other salaries that weren't capped before, which keeps them from increasing. And I don't know, do we have
one less administrator in the high school.
Yeah.
Tom, it really affects salaries and benefits. A lot of it's done at the negotiating table when you're negotiating the next contract. That's part of it. But the other part is, if you look at from K through 6, a lot of it is really set. It's really driven by enrollment. Okay, this many people have this many grades. If I have 105 people have 5 classes. If I have 199 people have 4 classes in a grade. We'll just say, okay, for example. So K through 6, a lot of it's driven by that. When you look at 7 and 8, that's also another. We expanded that a couple years ago, and it really depends on the number of electives. Okay, so in order to reduce, headcount or staff in that area, we have to look really hard at the curriculum redesign of 7 and 8, and the same with 9 through 12. We have to look at capacity in the high school and say, okay, if we're going to reduce headcount or salary, we have to look at reducing these programs or curriculum lines, and maybe what we're going to look at in the next couple of years, really understand what we want to teach, and as Mrs. Butler said, that really understand what the child should have as an experience from K through 12 level. Make sure we're setting the program up to deliver that, but it's not something you want to take and just start cutting and slashing in 1 year. Obviously, it's taking a look at over time how you do that. So that's really kind of what we should focus on the next couple of years to kind of get to that vision. So if that answers your question a little bit more. So a lot of it is, like I said, done over a period of time and really carefully sort of.
Understand. Mrs. Sugars mentioned tuition from out of district students. Is there anything that we as a board can be doing to increasing that number of students? I hear or read advertisements in the paper from other school or about other school districts. Are we aggressively pursuing that avenue?
It's got a mixed bag of blessings and dangers involved with that, because obviously our class size, and we're looking at that, and we have that as a consideration, as well as the expenditures that will come with having increased enrollment, and based on what that child's needs are, to give them curricularly what the best practices dictate they should have. So we have talked about it in curriculum, and at this point we feel that it's not something that we've actively pursued. And we do know of the other districts that are, and it comes with, you know, some of the discussion that I hear about at Garden State Publishing Schools are when schools admit other students from other districts, do they come along because they're a tremendous athletic person? Do they come along, you know, and how do you choose between students who may not be the best athletic individual, maybe academically superior or inferior? So there are all kinds of those choices. So at this point, we're treading lightly on that.
Okay.
On the other side, we've made a huge effort to eliminate people from our school district that aren't residents. So, you know, we're kind of looking at both ends of that problem. That I think we've been more successful at than attracting tuition-paying students. I don't believe that you're allowed to discount tuition. I mean, I think we do it with our employees, but I don't think we could discount to the general public. Yeah, it's set by the state, so that may make us less attractive. I don't know versus the competition. So.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I would only like to say in full disclosure, as a resident, I'd like the tax increase to be zero. You know, it's only $100 this year. But for a resident and a taxpayer of 45 years, I'm not going to go back 45 years and say what the increases have been, but let's just talk in terms of the last 5 years. Right? $100 a year amounts to $500 next year. And that $500 never goes away because, you know, I don't think we'll ever see no tax increase. But, you know, just, you know, please be, I know all of you or most of you are taxpayers here, but speaking for myself, you know, zero would be appreciated. That's what I would give you as my anticipated goal for you. $100 isn't your goal in my eyes. And your job is to manage it, that $60 million budget, to come up with zero for me to give you an exceptional grade. Thank you.
Sure thing, thank you. I'll just add that the process is as follows. After tonight's hearing, we have a formal adoption meeting March 27th. There is a plan, at least one, well, we already had one budget and finance meeting since the preliminary budget was approved, and I believe we're scheduled to have at least one more. And one of the things we will be looking at is, are there opportunities to further reduce the tax impact? I will say, though, that so far what I see is we have a great program. There's been a number of sacrifices in all across the board. Everybody's participated at each level, and we've been able to put together a budget within the cap that will allow us to continue to deliver what we think is a great program without significant change. So we take your challenge seriously. We have those discussions all the time, and when you come back for the budget adoption, you may see some slightly different variation of this, but well, we're not prepared to talk about that at this time. We're hopeful that there are other opportunities that we're still investigating to deliver a perhaps more, in your eyes, sound budget. So see what happens.
The expectation is zero.
Well, then you're going to be disappointed.
Okay. I'm prepared.
Okay. Thank you. We really appreciate you coming. Anyone else want to talk to us about the budget? Questions? All right, then. Yeah, but he's lived here for 45 years. You know, I've lived here for 45 years too.
Yeah, I just
The
want to.
last 5 years has been pretty good.
We've had, last 2 years, we actually haven't had any increase in total tax levy to taxpayers, so, right? And if you go back to that slide, obviously, you know, some of the when you add the tax levy, plus the expenditure tax levy, plus the debt service tax levy, there's been no increase net to the ordinary taxpayers. I'll show you that. You can see 2000.
The only tax increase has been from the other entity that can levy taxes in this township.
I'm sorry?
If you look, you see.
So the only tax increase you've had in the last 2 years is from the other entity that can levy taxes in this township.
So Tom, if you take a look at, I'll show you right here. In this year, we had 58,402 in 2010, the same 58,402. We actually went down $9 last year, and then this year, we're up, obviously, with this tax levy. So if you look, the last 2 years, we've had zero tax increase to the taxpayer. Okay, if you look at it in total.
I think the year before it was projected at $87. At least based on my notes, I'm not sure what it was last year.
It was a projected increase coming in the additional state aid.
Yeah, right, that's right. That might have been last, better than a year ago, but that's the official.
And we're up to 100, and we're up to 107, 108, whatever, 100,
Right.
whatever it comes out to be.
Correct.
But to your comment, it's not 500 over 5 years, it's 100 over 4 years.
I'm sorry?
It's not 500 over 5 years, it's 100 over 4 years. So the total net increase to the taxpayer from our budget has been $100 over the last 4 years.
We'll have a further conversation on that.
We will.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to our normal business here because we have one other item that we need to vote on. And I need a motion on the following resolution for the American Institute of History Education. Resolutions requested approving a contract pending changes recommended by the district solicitor with the American Institute for History Education in the amount of $45,000 for a professional development trip to Washington, D.C., April 16th to 19th, 2013. Attached as Exhibit 13-201. The trip is being funded by the Teaching American History Grant.
So
And second, please.
Second.
Okay. You have a question?
Who is this for? Who would be attending?
This would be for the Teaching American History Grant covers several districts in the area, Delran, Flemington, Moorestown, a couple other districts. So it would be, I don't remember the number of participants. I believe it's 40 participants that would be going. This is a company that we have worked with in the past to administer this Teaching American History Grant. If you recall, back in the summer, we approved the carryover funds for this grant, and this would be using up those funds. The name that you see there is Brian Stillart. He is a humanities supervisor from Delran, and he is currently helping administer the grant. The changes that Mr. Risden's office recommended was a few minor changes, the biggest changes being indemnification on both parts, both the district and this company. They have agreed to that. I just didn't have the final document in time to present to you tonight. I obviously won't sign it until I do. But so this is a little bit time sensitive, so that's why we wanted to put it on the agenda tonight.
So this is the grant?
This is the grant. Yep.
And so it's obviously funded by a federal grant, nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it.
All right, and then the other question is, I know we kind of revised our vendor acceptance policy. How many, you said they're in the system already, are you going to do any special due diligence on this vendor? Additions to that, or are they in the system?
We have worked with them in the past. They have administered quite a bit of this grant for us.
Okay.
We already approved a contract with them, I think, in September. And now this is an extension of a contract for a trip that's coming up.
Okay, so their current vendor is already in the system?
They are, yes.
So is this for our teachers to attend?
Yes.
Does that
As
cover
well
the
as
cost?
teachers from surrounding districts.
Right. Does this cover the cost of our teacher substitute replacements that we put in the classroom?
I believe it does. Not this particular contract, but funds from the grant will be distributed to districts to serve.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The President's aye. And we will be going into executive session. I'm sorry, I think I want to read that. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act authorizes the boards of education to meet in executive session in certain circumstances, and whereas the Open Public Meetings Act requires that the board adopt a resolution at a public meeting to go into a private session, now therefore be it resolved the Board of Education of Moorestown Township that it is necessary to meet in executive session to discuss certain items involving matters involving anticipated or pending litigation, including matters of attorney-client privilege and specifically grievances and settlement agreement. Be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential will be made public as soon as feasible. The minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Further resolved that the Board of Education will return to open session to conduct business. You will?
Yes.
Oh, we have to vote. That's correct. Okay. Well, so we have to vote on something that's going to happen in the executive session. We will return to open session to conduct business at the conclusion of the executive session. Can I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? President's side. Thank you.
The settlement agreement that has been discussed. Such a motion.
So moved.
Second. And you want a roll call vote? No. No? Okay. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? President's side. And a motion to approve the responses to level 3 grievances.
Yes, sir.
Of which there were 2.
Right.
Three.
Great.
Right. Can I have that motion?
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?